Meanwhile, passengers on the tube and bus face big increases in fares for the next 3 years under current plans. BBC London has calculated that a Zone 1 to 6 one-day travel card would cost £20 by 2015. Passenger groups claim commuters will be paying more for a worse service. Here's our transport correspondent, Tom Edwards.
How do I get to report it?
On tfl.gov.uk.
The Mayor in the Transport for London's control centre last week. He's decided fares must go up by the rate of inflation plus 2% until at least 2015 to protect infrastructure.
Analysts say, when they look at the TfL records, that the fare increase, the 7% increase, isn't for investment. It's actually to fill the hole that's been caused by the reduction in the government grant. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't agree with that. I think if you look at what happened last year, everybody said we wouldn't get the funding for Crossrail. Do you remember? People said they were going to scrap Crossrail. They said they wouldn't give us the funding for the tube upgrades. Actually, what happened, we went in and we had a long argument with the Treasury all last autumn, and we got both. And that is of huge importance for London. We did get the funding necessary. What we're doing with a moderate fares package, which is as low as we can manage it, is to make sure that we maintain that investment level.
But Transport for London have told us those fare rises do in part cover last year's cut from the government grant. £2 billion went from TfL's budget. And projects like Crossrail, which will ease overcrowding, were delayed by a year to save money. Other schemes to make stations less crowded or step-free have also been shelved. And until 2015, TfL's business plan says it needs fares to rise at inflation plus 2%. If inflation stays the same, a single bus fare would be around £1.80. A single Zone 1 to 5 Oyster fare, £5.40. With a Zone 1 to 6 day travel card, £20. Passenger groups say commuters are getting a rough deal.
They're going to be paying an awful lot more for a service which will experience more problems and in particular more disruptions in the coming year, because if you keep using old equipment and you don't replace it, then surprise, surprise, it will keep breaking down.
Others will say it's fairer that those who use transport pay more. What's happening to passengers is part of a wider policy to shift the burden of services from taxpayer to users. Tom Edwards, BBC London News.
Well, let's get a final thought on this from our political editor, Tim Donovan, who's in Liverpool and joins us now. So, Tim, what have we learned today, then?
Well, what's guaranteed between Ken Livingstone and Boris Johnson is that the arguments will continue over the figures, and it's going to be very difficult to get to the bottom of who exactly is right. Both are defending their positions this evening. What can be said is that last year, for sure, there was about £700 million that TfL got more in fares than it thought it was going to get a year before. Now, what was going to happen to that money? Well, Ken Livingstone is saying that that's available, that's why he can pay for a reduction in fares. TfL are saying, well, no, actually, we had to offset that, we had to use that to cover the cuts in grant that we've just experienced from government. And picking up on that crucial point Tom makes at the end of his piece there is clear evidence now over the last 5 years that the burden is being shifted onto the fare payer from the general taxpayer. 5 years ago, 43% of TfL's revenue was coming from fares. 5 years on, it's now 54%. It's gone up 11 percentage points in 5 years, and it will continue.
Interesting. Tim, from Liverpool, thank you. Our political editor, Tim Donovan. Coming up later in the programme.